Welcome to this explainer. Look, today we're tackling an absolute monster in the world of metallurgy, the iron-carbon phase diagram. But hey, we aren't going to treat this like some dense, boring math chart. Instead, think of it as a treasure map, a highly predictive map that literally dictates the behavior of the metals we interact with every single day. So here's our quick itinerary for navigating this terrain. First, the metallurgist's map, then iron's shifting shapes, the microstructure cast, defining steel and iron, reading the diagram, and finally, my favorite, breaking the rules. All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the metallurgist's map. Our sources hit the nail on the head here, pointing out that phase diagrams are essentially maps that predict exactly which structure will form. You see, metals don't just sit there in one static state. They morph. They exist in multiple internal structures depending on their environment. While pure metals are pretty straightforward, adding other elements creates this wildly complex landscape. And this diagram, it lets us map those outcomes perfectly. To get our bearings, a phase diagram basically plots temperature on one axis against composition, like, say, carbon content on the other. This reveals exactly which internal structural phases of a material are actually stable under those given conditions. This is absolutely crucial, guys, because it dictates the physical reality of every single piece of steel and cast iron out there.
Moving right along to Section 2, Iron's Shifting Shapes. Now, looking at pure iron, there is this fascinating structural clash even before we toss carbon into the mix. Below roughly 912 degrees Celsius, iron hangs out as ferrite. It's got this body-centered cubic structure, which makes it relatively soft. But heated up past that point, boom, it transforms into austenite. Because austenite shifts into a face-centered cubic structure, it physically opens up room to dissolve significantly more carbon. It's kind of like upgrading from a cramped closet to a walk-it. And you know what? That specific gap in carbon solubility between ferrite and austenite is the single most important fact in the entire iron-carbon system. Seriously. The fact that hot austenite can just soak up a ton of carbon while cold ferrite totally can't, well, that's the foundational secret that makes literally all heat treatment possible.
Okay, onto Section 3, the microstructure cast. So once we start actually adding that carbon, we get these two distinct microstructures. First up is cementite. Basically, when carbon exceeds what the iron can naturally dissolve, it forms this super hard, really brittle iron carbide. And then we have perlite. When austenite cools down nice and slow, it self-organizes into this gorgeous, distinctive layered microstructure of alternating ferrite and cementite bands.
Which brings us to a huge, massive landmark on our map, 0.76% carbon. This extremely precise composition is known as the eutectoid point. It's the exact magic number where austenite transforms directly and entirely into perlite upon cooling. It's a critical reference point for anyone working with this stuff.
Let's keep exploring in Section 4, defining steel and iron. Here is our ultimate hard boundary line, 2.1%. Any iron-carbon alloy with a carbon content up to this point, that's technically steel. But the second you cross that border, it officially becomes cast iron. Now, cast iron is more brittle, for sure, but it offers incredible cast stability and wear resistance. That's why it's the absolute go-to for heavy-duty stuff, like engine blocks. Zooming in on the steel side of things, you can see a really clear trade-off happening. Low-carbon steels, so under 0.3%, they're soft, highly weldable, perfect for structural applications. Medium carbon gives you this nice balance of strength and ductility. But once you push into high-carbon territory, anything over 0.6%, you are actively trading away that ductility to get the intense hardness you need for things like cutting tools and springs.
All right, Section 5, reading the diagram.
So within any two-phase region on this map, you just need a classic 1-2 punch to read it. Step 1, you use tie lines to identify the exact composition of each individual phase present at a given temperature. Then Step 2, you apply the lever rule calculation. This little trick determines the relative proportion of each phase. It basically decodes exactly what is sitting there inside the metal. Finally, my favorite part, Section 6, breaking the rules. So far, we've really only looked at the map under normal equilibrium conditions. But, things get wild when we decide to go entirely off-map. By cooling the material way faster than the equilibrium phase diagram assumes, we trigger non-equilibrium behavior. This rapid cooling produces entirely different, highly advanced microstructures that the standard map just does not show directly. The diagram gives us the rules, but intentionally breaking them? That is where the real metallurgical magic happens. Which leaves us with a pretty thrilling cliffhanger. What exactly happens when we cool faster than the map assumes? If breaking the rules is what enables advanced heat treatments like quenching, how do metallurgists actually manipulate these transformations to forge the perfect steel? Well, think about that, and we'll dive right into it together in the next explainer.